Hey everyone, welcome back to Reading with Tatiana. Today I'm doing my book review on Leave the World Behind by Rumaan, and I gave this book a 4 out of 5. Before I go into my full review, I'd like to give my Booktuber shout today to Reading with Lawrence. I came across her channel recently and she has a bunch of vlogs, unboxing, and reviews. I will link her channel down below if you want to check out her channel. And as always, I would appreciate if you like my content, if you can please hit the subscribe button. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you've read this book or have any recommendations for me, please leave a comment down below. A bit about Rumaan. He is the child of immigrants from Bangladesh who came to America to have a more stable life for their family. And he grew up in, I believe, Washington, D.C., in a very suburban community. And his family really wanted to assimilate him into American culture so much that even though he's visibly a person of color, that he grew up to believe that he was nothing different from his white peers. To add on to him having the experience of seeing himself no different than his white peers, he went on to do creative writing for his college degree, and he started working for Condé Nast, which I believe is a huge magazine publication in New York. And when he was working there for several years, he was very successful, jumping from role to role. And he went to his boss's party at his boss's place, and he felt like he really belonged because he worked hard to get to where he was. And it was until his boss's mother mistaken him from the driver, despite him having met the mother several times, he realized that no matter where he builds his career and where he goes in life, that he'll always be seen as different by some people. Why I said it was interesting to learn about Rumaan's upbringing was because his debut novel was actually about two women who grew up most of their life together in their 20s, and then it talks about that transition period between coming of age into adulthood. So his first book, it's called Pretty and Rich, and it's about two young women coming of age into their adulthood. His second book, That Kind of Mother, is about a first-time mother who is deeply in love with her newborn and also struggling to be a mom. So it's very interesting to see him write about these two stories that seem like not very obvious to who he is, because obviously he is a man. So it's very interesting. But I read an interview about him where a lot of his books actually is very autobiographical of his life. So he must have had lots of experiences adjacent to these stories, which I find really interesting. This novel, Leave the World Behind, you can tell by the cover, it's very dark, very ominous. I actually picked it at the library because of the cover. I thought it was really interesting. I actually didn't even read the back cover, so I just kind of did it on a whim. And I'm glad I did, because this novel, the genre is a thriller, I would say, and a bit of mystery, and it was also published in 2020. The premise of this book, as I mentioned earlier, is a mystery. We meet a family who has, believe like two middle-aged parents and two teenagers, well, one preteen, one teenager, and they go to the Hamptons for a weekend getaway, for summer vacation. And on a summer vacation, nothing is amiss. They're just enjoying each other's company, reflecting on their own lives. There's lots of internal dialogue of each character, of the father, the mother, the son, and the daughter. And then one night, there's a knock on the door. So this is where the thriller mystery part starts. And the knock on the door is a older black couple, and they say they are the hosts of the Airbnb they're renting from, and that there's a power outage back in New York where they went to see a play or a show, and they think that with such a big power outage, that it's better to bunker down in their vacation property. So they're asking if they can stay a night at the Airbnb with this family. So that's kind of where the mystery starts. I really don't want to get too much more after that because this book is very short, only 241 pages. And like, honestly, it's super captivating to me. And I don't know, it's just a great book because like nothing happens, but at the same time, like everything happens. And the author, Rumaan, does a really good job sharing the internal dialogue and the conflicts that each character has. So I really recommend this book, and that's why it was a 4. So that's a bit of the premise of the story. I'll just briefly touch on the characters. I won't go too much into each one, but I just want to point out the characters because this book kind of, when I read it, kind of reminded me of a play. I can see it being a really good play. There's only 8 characters. So there's 6 characters. So there's a family. There's the mother, Amanda, the husband, Clay, their kids, Archie and Rose, and then the hosts of the Airbnb, GH and Ruth. So I really enjoy that because in the whole book, you only meet 6 characters. There is one more side character, but they're not that important. And I just really like how you get to know each character and they're so like fleshed out. Common themes I learned in this book is it made me question that if a disaster were to happen or a huge power outage, what would I do? What would I do in isolation? Like obviously me and you watching this video right now, we've experienced a pandemic, but during a pandemic, we're still very connected virtually to people. We're still able to do some things. So it'd be interesting to think what would happen if you're in like a cabin in the woods and what would you do to be fully isolated and not be able to get any information from the outside world. So that was the first common theme or like lesson or question I had within myself. What will I do in a disaster? What will I do in isolation? To add on to what I would do in a disaster isolation, I think this novel also talks about thinking about for yourself and thinking about others, because in this novel, Amanda obviously has kids to think about. In the situation of Ruth and her husband GH, who are the host of the Airbnb, they only have themselves to think about. So when there's a disaster and people have to make moves and make choices, do you want to go and support them because safety in numbers, or is it better to stay put? And if whatever decision you decide, like, is there a right or wrong answer, and how do you mitigate that conflict within yourselves? So that was a very interesting thing that I thought about throughout the whole book. Another interesting theme that I thought about in the book is very minute in the plot, but it really stuck with me throughout the novel, was that if in a disaster or even a day-to-day situation where you could disregard someone or do something bad, but no one cared to catch you and no one was there to witness it, would you do it or would you not do it? Would you be the bigger person, or would you just be selfish and take the lower road? So that was very interesting for me to think about in the book in relation to one of the characters and the decision they made in the moment. Things I didn't really enjoy about the book, although this is probably more reflection on myself, is that Rumaan used lots of very big words that aren't very commonly used. So it was very like choppy for me to stop reading and having to look up a word like every like other page. That was a bit difficult for me. The dialogue was also a bit choppy. It was all flitting back and forth between characters very quickly. However, now having finished the book, I think that was intentional to make it seem that way. And also there were some times that he over described certain things, which I felt like, oh, what was the point of that? But I can see that happening because I think it adds to, in a disaster situation, sometimes you kind of pinpoint on really specific things or you reminisce. So the things I don't like aren't really valid in my point. It was just like preferences that I have for the novel. One thing I really enjoyed about the book that made me give this book a 4 out of 5 is the mind spirals that each character goes through. They usually react to something in their immediacy, and then it kind of like effortlessly seems and bleeds into their mind and things they think about in society and also in their day-to-day life. And I start questioning the logic of being human and the logic of society. And I really enjoyed that aspect of the book. Even though earlier I said that it was a bit too detailed, like now that I finished the book, it has really stuck with me and made me really question things about society and about living. So I really, really enjoyed that aspect of the book. Another thing that Rumaan did really well was that throughout the whole book, I felt a constant feeling of dread and doom and what's going to happen next. And it's just amazing he was able to do that through writing, because usually that you can only really get that feeling through a movie, right? With sound effects and visuals. So I really enjoyed that part of the novel while reading it. On Goodreads, this novel got an average of 3.21 out of 5, which I think is a very average rating. It definitely showed there were lots of jarring opinions. There were lots of ones, lots of twos, and then lots of 4s and 5s, not too many 3s. This book, I think, I would recommend that if you like thrillers and you like more of a slow-paced book where you don't really know what really happened or does happen, is good for you. But if you're someone that really enjoys a book that's very purposeful and very like, I know exactly what happened to all the characters at the end, then maybe this book isn't for you. So I would tread lightly if you decide to read this book. Common complaints about this book on Goodreads is that people felt the theme was overplayed, especially now that COVID has happened. In Rumaan's defense, this book was published in 2020, so he clearly was working on this book way before COVID was a thing. So it was just, I think, poor timing. Also, people felt he took the liberty to be too over-descriptive of certain things, which I mentioned before, which I think can be a good or bad thing depending on your perspective on that. I personally really enjoyed that after reading the book. So I think that's a plus for me, but I can see that being a negative because some people felt he took too long to get to the point. Other common reasons why people didn't like this book, which I mentioned earlier, was that the ending wasn't clear. However, not everything needs to have a conclusion. So if you go in not needing a conclusion, I think that's fine. One critique I want to share was someone saying, "This was an odd one. IDK, I don't know. Reading it was a constant flip between please let this shit end and okay. Wow, 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 wow. Mind blown." I thought it was a really apt review because I kind of felt that way too. Despite it being a short book, there were some points where I'm just like, what's going to happen next? Like, I just want this to end. I'm feeling anxious about the characters. But then when the reveal happened or whenever the next plot came to, I was like, wow, that was really good. So that is a very perfect description of what this book experience will be if you decide to read it. Other reasons that people really enjoyed this book on Goodreads, which I definitely agree with, was that the book itself was an okay read, but after I finished it, which was like last night, I still been thinking about it and all the things that could happen if I was in that situation. So it's kind of like a very good scary movie where it's not scary when you watch it per se. There's like no jump scares, but then after you finish the movie, it's still on your mind. So this book kind of is like that for me, which makes it a 4 out of 5. I will have to say though, last night when I finished it, my gut reaction was a 3 out of 5. A other reason I want to share why people liked it is they felt the story is very original. However, some of the critique on that is that with such an original story, this book could have been a short story actually to, I guess, relay the concept the author wanted to do. However, I will argue that the book is only 241 pages and you can definitely finish it because I finished this almost on an hour and a half plane ride. So you could do it too. Why you should read this book. So I think you should read this book if you enjoy thrillers. It was very enjoyable, or end of the world novels. And the other reason you should read this book, and there's always my number one reason why you should read the book, is that it has been picked up for adaptation. I'm not sure if it's a movie or a series, but I'm thinking it's probably a movie because the two stars that go star in it for now is Julia Roberts and Denzel Washington, which I think will be super exciting. So that's a really big reason why you should read this book. Now I'll share how this book made me feel because if you ask me next week, a year, 5 years from now, I probably won't remember all the details of this book, but I'll always remember how the book made me feel. So this book, Leave the World Behind by Rumaan Alam, it made me feel a feeling of doom. And that sounds very negative, but it made me a feeling of doom in the best way possible because his words just sucked me in and took me for a journey. And I really felt like, if I was in the situation, I really feel for these characters and I can see why they're thinking and acting that way. So he did a really great job making me feel a sense of doom the whole time. That is my book review for Leave the World Behind by Rumaan Alam. Thank you for watching till the end. If you read this book, let me know what you think. And if you want to join me next time, my next book, I'm so excited because I was on hold for 2 months at the library, is The House of the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. And I'm really excited about this book because it's been on my Goodreads for so long and I see a lot of people talk about it. So yeah, if you want to join me next time, I will see you then. Thank you for watching. Bye.